The forest floor crunched beneath Luna's boots as she ventured deeper into the wilderness, each step taking her further from the golden lights and celebratory howls of the harvest festival. The scent of wood smoke and roasted meat still clung to her hair, a bitter reminder of the celebration she'd fled. Behind her, the pack would be shifting soon, their wolves emerging under the full moon's call to hunt together as one united family. She wouldn't be missed, not when Celeste held court as the newly mated alpha female, her stolen prize displayed like a trophy. Luna's fingers trembled as she pushed through a curtain of hanging moss, the memory of blood magic still burning in her nostrils. She'd caught the scent the moment Marcus had looked at Celeste with those vacant, adoring eyes, the metallic tang that had no place in their world. Werewolves were creatures of earth and moon, of natural bonds forged by fate and strengthened by choice. Blood magic was vampire territory, forbidden and impossible. Yet Celeste had somehow mastered it. The thunder grew louder as Luna climbed the rocky path, her enhanced hearing picking up the subtle shift in water pressure that meant she was close. Thornwood Falls had been her sanctuary since childhood, the one place in their territory where Celeste never followed. Their parents had always said the waterfall was too dangerous, too unpredictable, but Luna had discovered the hidden caves behind the rushing water when she was 12, and desperate to escape another birthday party where she'd been overshadowed by her sister's radiance. A branch snapped somewhere behind her, and Luna froze. The sound was wrong, too heavy for a deer, too deliberate for coincidence. Her wolf senses stretched out, tasting the night air for familiar scents, but found only the overwhelming perfume of night-blooming jasmine and something else, something cold and ancient that made her skin prickle with unease. Luna. The voice carried through the darkness like silk over steel. She spun around to find Celeste emerging from the shadows, her festival dress pristine despite the rough terrain. Moonlight caught the silver threads woven through the fabric, making her sister appear ethereal, otherworldly, beautiful and terrible all at once. "You followed me." Luna's voice came out steadier than she felt. Celeste's laugh was musical, but there was something wrong with it, a discordant note that Luna's wolf wanted to flee from. "Did you really think you could just disappear? Tonight of all nights. Tonight, when you revealed yourself as something unnatural." Luna backed toward the sound of rushing water. "What are you, Celeste? Because you're not just my sister anymore." The question hung between them like a blade. Celeste's perfect features shifted, revealing something predatory beneath the surface. Her eyes, normally the warm brown of autumn leaves, now held flecks of crimson that pulsed with their own light. "I'm what I've always been," Celeste said, moving closer with fluid grace. "The stronger sister. The one who takes what she wants, instead of pining uselessly from the shadows. Marcus was meant for me." The words tasted bitter. The moon dreams showed us together. Every wolf in the pack witnessed my claim. Moon dreams can be influenced. Celeste's smile was sharp enough to cut. With the right incentive, even fate bends. The admission hit Luna like a physical blow. Not just tonight. How many times had Celeste stolen her destiny? How many potential mates had been claimed through supernatural manipulation rather than natural attraction? "You can't keep doing this," Luna whispered. "The elders will—" "The elders see what I want them to see." Celeste's power pressed against Luna's mind like smoke, seeking entry. "And you'll forget this conversation happened. You'll return to the festival and congratulate me properly on my mating. You'll smile and pretend your heart isn't breaking, just like you always do." The compulsion wrapped around Luna's thoughts, but instead of submitting, she felt something wild and fierce rise up in response. Her wolf had never been the strongest, never the most dominant, but tonight it snarled with protective fury. The magical pressure shattered like glass against her sudden defiance. Celeste stumbled backward, shock replacing confidence. "How?" Luna didn't wait for her sister to recover. She turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush toward the waterfall. Behind her, Celeste's frustrated shriek echoed through the trees, but Luna was already at the water's edge, already stepping onto the slick rocks that led behind the falls. The hidden path was treacherous in daylight, potentially fatal in darkness. but Luna had walked it 100 times. Her feet found familiar handholds as she climbed toward the cave entrance, spray from the falls soaking through her clothes and washing away the last traces of her sister's unnatural scent. She reached the narrow ledge behind the water, just as something shifted in the air around her, a presence stirring after long slumber, drawn by her desperate flight and the power she'd somehow unleashed against Celeste's magic. The cave mouth yawned before her, deeper and darker than she remembered, filled with whispers that sounded almost like her name. Luna pressed herself against the cold stone wall, her heart hammering against her ribs as the whispers faded into silence. The cave entrance loomed before her like an open mouth, but something about the darkness beyond felt different, alive, in a way that made her wolf pace nervously beneath her skin. She'd hidden here countless times before, seeking solitude when the weight of pack politics became unbearable. But tonight, the familiar sanctuary felt charged with an energy that raised the fine hairs on her arms. The sound of rushing water masked any pursuit from Celeste, but Luna knew her sister wouldn't follow. Not here. Celeste had always claimed the falls made her skin crawl, though Luna suspected the real reason ran deeper than mere discomfort. Whatever power Celeste had acquired, it seemed to recoil from this place as if the ancient stones themselves rejected unnatural magic. Luna's breathing gradually steadied, as the immediate terror of discovery passed, replaced by the crushing weight of everything she'd lost tonight. Marcus had been different from the others, or so she'd thought. Where previous potential mates had simply gravitated towards Celeste's magnetic presence, Marcus had actively sought Luna out over the past months. He'd brought her rare herbs from distant territories, sat with her during communal meals when others ignored her quiet presence, even asked her to partner him during the traditional courtship dances. She'd actually believed this time might be different. The irony wasn't lost on her that she'd inherited their grandmother's gift for herbalism, the very talent that made her valuable to the pack, yet remained invisible when it came to matters of the heart. Pack members sought her out daily for healing tinctures and protective wards, grateful for her knowledge of which mountain flowers could ease a difficult pregnancy or which bark preparations would speed the healing of training injuries. Elder Rosewood had even mentioned that Luna's skills rivaled those of their ancestors, witches who'd once served as both healers and spiritual guardians for their kind. But gratitude and desire were entirely different beasts. Luna pulled her knees to her chest, trying to ward off the bone-deep chill that had nothing to do with her soaked clothing. Tomorrow she would have to return to her cottage on the pack's eastern border, back to her carefully tended garden of medicinal plants and her workshop filled with drying herbs and bubbling preparations. She would smile politely when pack members congratulated Celeste on her mating, would prepare strengthening tonics for the newly bonded pair, would pretend her heart hadn't shattered into pieces small enough to scatter on the mountain wind. It was a life she'd built from necessity rather than choice, carving out purpose in the spaces her sister couldn't touch. While Celeste commanded attention in the pack's social hierarchy, Luna had quietly become indispensable in other ways. When hunters returned injured from dangerous territory disputes, they sought her healing skills. When mothers feared for children showing signs of late shifting, they trusted her gentle guidance. When the Alpha himself had fallen gravely ill last winter, he'd called for Luna's remedies when all others failed. Yet none of that mattered when it came to claiming a mate. The pattern had repeated itself so many times that Luna had learned to recognize the signs, the subtle cooling of interest, the way conversations would trail off when she approached, the vacant look that would creep into a potential suitor's eyes after spending time alone with Celeste. She'd told herself it was natural attraction, that her sister's beauty and confidence simply outshone her own quiet presence. Now she understood the truth was far more sinister. How long had Celeste been using blood magic? The practice was not just forbidden among werewolves, it should have been impossible. Their kind drew power from the moon and earth, from the natural cycles that governed all living things. Blood magic belonged to vampires and dark witches, creatures that their ancestors had driven from these mountains generations ago. The very idea that such corruption could take root in their pack sent ice through Luna's veins. But it explained so much. Celeste's unnatural beauty that seemed to grow more pronounced each season, her ability to bend others to her will with nothing more than a smile, the way electronics malfunctioned around her, as if her presence disrupted the natural order of things. Luna had dismissed these signs as quirks of a particularly dominant wolf, but now she recognized them for what they truly were, symptoms of something fundamentally wrong. A low rumble echoed from deep within the cave, so faint Luna almost missed it beneath the water's roar. She tilted her head, straining to identify the source, but heard only the familiar sounds of dripping moisture and wind whistling through hidden passages. Still, her wolf remained agitated, torn between the urge to flee and an inexplicable pull toward whatever waited in the darkness beyond. Luna closed her eyes and leaned back against the stone, exhaustion finally claiming her. Tomorrow would bring fresh humiliations and the familiar ache of watching her sister's triumph, but tonight she could simply exist in this space between worlds, where the waterfall's power washed away everything but the sound of her own heartbeat. In the depths of the cave, something ancient stirred in response to that rhythm, drawn by the scent of genuine magic untainted by corruption. Luna's eyes snapped open as the rumbling sound came again, deeper this time, and unmistakably deliberate. The rhythm matched her heartbeat so perfectly that for a moment she wondered if she was hearing her own pulse amplified by the cave's acoustics. But her wolf knew better. Every instinct screamed that something was awakening in the darkness beyond, something that had been waiting far longer than any natural creature should be able to survive. She should leave. Every rational part of her mind urged retreat to safety of Packlands, even if it meant facing Celeste's triumph and the hollow congratulations she'd be expected to offer. But as Luna started to rise, a new sound froze her in place, the unmistakable scrape of chains against stone, as if something massive was stirring after centuries of stillness. The temperature in the cave dropped so suddenly that her breath misted in the air. Luna's enhanced senses caught a scent that made her blood run cold, ancient earth and metal, dried roses and something darker, something that tasted of midnight and forgotten promises. It was beautiful and terrifying, completely unlike anything in her experience as a werewolf. "Who disturbs my rest?" The voice emerged from the depths like whispered thunder, speaking words in a language that Luna's mind shouldn't have understood yet somehow did. The accent was old-world European, refined in a way that suggested nobility and power accumulated over lifetimes rather than years. Luna's practical nature warred with an inexplicable pull toward the voice's owner. She'd grown up on pack stories of the creatures that once haunted these mountains, vampires and dark witches who'd been driven out by her ancestors' righteous fury. Every child in Thornwood Falls learned early that the old caves were forbidden territory, places where evil still lingered, despite the cleansing passage of time. But this presence didn't feel evil. Dangerous, certainly. Powerful beyond anything she'd encountered. Yet underneath the intimidating authority, she sensed something almost lonely. "I'm sorry," Luna called into the darkness, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "I didn't mean to wake you. I was just seeking shelter." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the waterfall's endless song. Then came the sound of movement, not footsteps, but the fluid motion of someone who moved like shadows given form. Luna's wolf pressed closer to the surface, torn between fascination and the primal understanding that she was in the presence of an apex predator. "A werewolf," the voice mused, closer now though she couldn't see its owner in the absolute darkness. "It has been some time since one of your kind ventured behind these falls. Tell me, little wolf, what drives you to seek sanctuary in a place your people declared cursed?" The question hung in the air, like a challenge. Luna could lie, could claim she'd simply taken a wrong turn during her flight from the festival. But something about this being's presence demanded honesty in a way that Celeste's compulsions never had. "My sister stole my mate," she admitted, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. Again. Only this time she used blood magic to do it, and I finally understand that I'll never have anything of my own as long as she lives. Blood magic. The temperature dropped another degree, among werewolves. How interesting. Luna heard chains shift again, and realized with growing certainty that whoever shared this space with her was bound by more than just the cave's darkness. "You're imprisoned here," she said, the pieces clicking together. "That's why the pack elders always warned us away. You're what they were afraid we'd find." A low chuckle echoed off the stone walls, rich and dark as aged wine. "Perceptive, little wolf." "Yes, I am bound here by magic far older and more complex than your sister's stolen power. 3 centuries I have waited for someone with the strength to break these chains, yet those who possess such ability lack the inclination, while those with inclination lack the power." "Until now?" Luna guessed, though she couldn't fathom what he meant. Her magic was herbalism, healing, gentle arts that worked with nature rather than against it. Nothing that could challenge ancient binding spells. Perhaps. Movement in the darkness suggested he was studying her despite the lack of light. "You carry something rare in your blood, little wolf. Something pure that has not been corrupted by the ambitions that drive your sister. The question is, what are you willing to sacrifice for freedom, both yours and mine?" Luna's practical mind screamed warnings about making bargains with imprisoned beings, especially ones that spoke in riddles about power and sacrifice, but her heart, still raw from Celeste's latest betrayal, whispered that anything had to be better than returning to a life of perpetual humiliation. "What kind of freedom are you offering?" she asked, taking the first step down a path that would change everything. In the darkness, ancient eyes gleamed with the first hope they'd known in 300 years. The weight of her question settled between them like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples through the darkness that Luna could almost feel against her skin. She pressed her palms against the cold cave floor, grounding herself as her mind raced through the implications of what she'd just asked. "What kind of freedom are you offering?" The words echoed in her memory, and she realized with growing alarm that she essentially invited a centuries-old prisoner to negotiate for his release. "That is a complex question," the voice replied, and she caught the faint sound of metal against stone as chains shifted in the darkness. "Freedom, I have learned, means different things to different souls. For you, little wolf, it might mean escape from your sister's shadow, the power to claim what is rightfully yours, recognition for the strength you possess but have never been allowed to wield." Luna's throat tightened. Everything he described was exactly what her heart craved, but the rational part of her mind, the part that had kept her alive and useful despite Celeste's machinations, whispered urgent warnings. "And for you?" she asked, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. "For me, freedom would mean walking beneath the moon again, feeling the night air against my skin, reclaiming what was stolen from me by those who feared what they could not control." His voice carried centuries of restrained fury. "I am what your kind calls a vampire king, though that title means little when one is bound by enchanted chains in a cave behind a waterfall." Luna's blood turned to ice water in her veins. Vampire king. The stories her grandmother used to tell came rushing back, tales of creatures so powerful that entire packs would flee their territories rather than risk confrontation. Beings who could drain the life from dozens of wolves with a thought, who commanded legions of lesser vampires and bent the very fabric of reality to their will. Her wolf whimpered and pressed itself small against her consciousness, every instinct screaming at her to run. But Luna found herself frozen by more than fear. Curiosity warred with terror as she processed the impossible situation she'd stumbled into. If the pack elders knew what truly lay behind Thornwood Falls, why hadn't they posted guards? Why allow pack members to venture anywhere near these caves? "You're afraid," he observed, though not unkindly. "Good. Fear keeps one alive when dealing with forces beyond their understanding. But I sense something else in you as well, a desperation that matches my own. Tell me, little wolf, how many more times will you allow your sister to steal your fate before you decide enough is enough?" The question hit like a physical blow. Luna thought of Marcus, of the way his eyes had gone vacant the moment Celeste appeared at the festival. She remembered David from last spring, Thomas the year before that, a string of potential mates stretching back to her 18th birthday. Each time she told herself it was coincidence, that her sister's natural charisma simply outshone her own quiet presence. Now she understood that every loss had been orchestrated, every heartbreak carefully crafted through blood magic and supernatural manipulation. "She'll never stop," Luna whispered, the admission tearing at her throat. "As long as we're both alive, she'll take everything I want and twist it to serve her own desires. Then perhaps it is time to level the playing field." Something in his tone made Luna's skin prickle with unease. "What do you mean?" "Your sister draws power from stolen blood and forbidden rituals. But you, little wolf, you carry magic in your very essence. Pure magic, untainted by corruption or ambition. The kind of power that could break even the strongest binding spells, with the right guidance." Luna's mind reeled. Her? Powerful? She was an herbalist, nothing more. Her magic worked through gentle coaxing of natural elements, not the earth-shaking displays that marked truly dominant supernatural beings. "I think you're mistaken about what I can do." "Am I?" Chains rattled as he moved closer, and Luna caught the faint impression of a tall figure just beyond the reach of her enhanced vision. "Answer me this. How did you break your sister's compulsion tonight?" Most wolves would have bent to her will without even realizing they were being influenced. The question stopped Luna cold. She'd been so focused on escaping Celeste's presence that she hadn't properly considered how she'd shattered her sister's mental manipulation. The magical pressure had felt overwhelming one moment, then simply gone, as if her will had proved stronger than whatever force Celeste wielded. "I don't know," she admitted. "I just refused to let her inside my head." Refused. He seemed to taste the word. Such simple language for such a remarkable feat. "Do you realize that breaking a blood magic compulsion should be impossible for an unbonded Omega, yet you achieved it through sheer force of will?" Luna's chest tightened with a mixture of pride and terror. If she truly possessed the power he described, why had she never felt it before? Why had she spent years accepting her place as the invisible sister when she might have had the strength to change her circumstances? "What would you want in return?" she asked, hating how small her voice sounded in the darkness. "For teaching me to use this power?" In the silence that followed, Luna realized she was balanced on a knife's edge between two impossible choices: remain powerless and watch Celeste destroy everything she cared about, or make a bargain with a creature that could very well destroy her soul. "Simply this," he said finally. "When you are strong enough, break these chains. Set me free to reclaim what is mine." Luna closed her eyes and tried to imagine returning to her cottage, to her careful garden and quiet life, knowing she'd walked away from the only chance she might ever have to fight back. In the darkness, she felt the weight of destiny shifting around them both. Luna's heart hammered against her ribs as the weight of his proposal settled over her like a burial shroud. "Break these chains." The words echoed in her mind, carrying implications that made her wolf pace restlessly beneath her skin. She was being asked to free a vampire king, a creature whose very existence violated every law the pack held sacred. "I need to see you," she whispered, the words escaping before she could stop them. If we're going to do this, I can't make this choice blind." The silence stretched so long that Luna wondered if she'd offended him. Then came the soft sound of movement, followed by a whisper of power that made the air itself seem to shimmer. A pale blue light bloomed in the depths of the cave, cold as starlight and twice as beautiful. Luna's breath caught. He was magnificent and terrible, everything the old stories had described and nothing like she'd expected. Tall beyond mortal proportions, with aristocratic features that belonged in Renaissance paintings rather than mountain caves. His dark hair fell in waves past his shoulders, framing a face that could have been carved from marble if marble could hold such predatory grace. But it was his eyes that held her captive, ancient silver that seemed to contain entire galaxies, beautiful and utterly inhuman. Thick chains bound his wrists and ankles, their metal gleaming with runes that hurt to look at directly. The magical restraints had left no visible marks on his pale skin, but Luna could sense the power they contained, magic woven with such skill that it had held a creature of immense strength for 3 centuries without weakening. "Now you see what you would be freeing," he said, his voice carrying a note she couldn't quite identify. "Still willing to make this bargain, little wolf?" Luna studied his face, searching for signs of the monster she'd expected. Instead, she found weariness that spoke of centuries of isolation, and underneath that, something that looked almost like hope. "What's your name?" she asked. "If I'm going to risk everything for you, I should at least know what to call you." A smile ghosted across his lips, the first genuine expression she'd seen from him. "Dimitri Shadowmere. And you, brave little herbalist?" "Luna Blackthorn." The formal introduction felt surreal under the circumstances, but somehow it made what came next feel more real, more permanent. "Luna," he repeated, and her name sounded different in his accent, richer, more significant. "Fitting for one who may prove to be my salvation." The enormity of what she was considering crashed over her like a tidal wave. She would be betraying everything her pack stood for, aligning herself with their ancestral enemy. If anyone discovered what she'd done, it would mean exile or death. She thought of Elder Rosewood, who'd taught her the healing arts with such patience, of the pack members who relied on her remedies, of the life she'd built in the spaces between Celeste's ambitions. Then she thought of Marcus's vacant stare, of the years stretching ahead filled with the same heartbreak and humiliation, of Celeste's blood magic growing stronger, while she remained powerless to fight back. "Teach me," Luna said, the words falling into the silence like stones into a well. "I accept your bargain." Something shifted in the cave's atmosphere, as if the very air recognized the weight of her commitment. Dimitri's eyes flared with silver fire, and she felt an almost physical sensation of doors closing behind her, not trapping her, but sealing off the path back to her old life. "Understand this," he said, his voice carrying new authority. "Once we begin, there will be no return to ignorance. The power I offer will change you fundamentally. You will become something your pack will fear, even as they benefit from your strength." Luna nodded, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. "My pack already fears anything they don't understand. At least this way, I'll have a reason. And when they turn on you, as they inevitably will when they sense how far you've grown beyond their control, you will have to choose between the life you've known and the power you've claimed." The warning should have terrified her. Instead, Luna felt a strange sense of peace settling over her heart. For the first time in her life, she was choosing her own path, rather than accepting whatever scraps Celeste left behind. "Then I'll choose power," she said simply. "I'm tired of being the sister who gets the leftovers." Dimitri's smile was sharp as winter moonlight. "Excellent. We begin now." He lifted his chained hands, and the blue light intensified until it filled every corner of the cave. Luna felt the magic wash over her skin like silk, alien and intoxicating. Her wolf whimpered at the contact, instinctively recognizing that they were crossing a threshold from which there could be no return. As Dimitri began to speak words in that ancient language that somehow made perfect sense to her, Luna Blackthorn took her first steps into darkness. Behind her, the waterfall continued its eternal song, washing away the last traces of who she used to be. The words flowed from Dimitri's lips like liquid silver, each syllable resonating through Luna's bones with vibrations that seemed to rewrite her very molecular structure. She gasped as the ancient language took root in her mind, downloading centuries of knowledge in heartbeats that felt like eternities. Her wolf retreated deeper into her consciousness, overwhelmed by concepts that had no place in the natural world. "Power recognizes power," came Dimitri's voice, though his lips hadn't moved. "Your sister draws strength from stolen essence, but you will learn to channel the raw forces that shape reality itself." Luna's hands trembled as mystical energy coursed through her veins, replacing her blood with something far more potent. She could feel her cellular structure shifting, adapting, becoming something that existed in the spaces between mortal and immortal. It should have been agony, would have killed any normal wolf, but instead she felt herself expanding, growing into abilities she'd never imagined possible. The lesson was interrupted by the sharp crack of splintering stone. Dimitri's silver eyes snapped toward the cave entrance, his entire demeanor shifting from teacher to predator in an instant. "We have company." Luna spun toward the waterfall, her newly enhanced senses picking up scents that made her stomach drop. Pack wolves. Multiple signatures, all familiar. Elder Thorn's stern authority, Beta Marcus's confusion, and underneath it all, the sickly sweet corruption of Celeste's blood magic. "Luna Blackthorn!" Elder Thorn's voice boomed through the cascade, magically amplified to carry over the thundering water. "You will emerge immediately and answer for your crimes." "Crimes?" Luna whispered, though even as she spoke she understood. Her transformation hadn't gone unnoticed. The pack's mystical guardians must have felt the disturbance when Dimitri's ancient magic began reshaping her essence. "Your sister has convinced them you've been corrupted by dark forces," Dimitri observed, his chains rattling as he moved protectively closer. Which, to be fair, is not entirely inaccurate. Through the waterfall's veil, Luna caught glimpses of torchlight and the hulking shadows of wolves in hybrid form. At least 6 pack members, maybe more. All here because Celeste had undoubtedly spun some tale about Luna's dangerous disappearance and the evil magic she'd sensed from the forbidden caves. "What do I do?" Luna asked, panic threading through her voice despite her newfound power. She could feel the strength Dimitri had awakened in her, but it was raw, untrained. Using it against her pack would be like wielding a sword she'd never held. "You learn the first rule of our world," Dimitri said softly. "Power means nothing without the will to use it. Your pack comes to bind you, to drag you back to a life of servitude. Will you submit, or will you show them what you've become?" Luna's throat constricted as she watched the shadows positioning themselves around the cave mouth. These weren't enemies, they were her pack, people she'd known since childhood. Elder Thorn had delivered her when her mother went into labor during a blizzard. Beta Marcus had been her friend before Celeste's magic claimed him. How could she raise her hand against them? Then Celeste's voice floated through the water, honey-sweet and utterly false. "Luna's been deceived by something ancient and evil. We need to save her before it destroys her soul completely." The manipulation in those words, the way Celeste positioned herself as the concerned sister while painting Luna as a helpless victim, ignited something fierce in Luna's chest. Even now, even here, Celeste was stealing her agency and reducing her to a plot device in someone else's story. "I won't submit," Luna said, her voice gaining strength with each word. "Not anymore." Dimitri's smile was proud and terrible. "Then we give them a demonstration. But carefully. You'll need allies in the dark times coming, and corpses make poor friends." Luna nodded, understanding. She stepped toward the waterfall, Dimitri's training flowing through her consciousness like a river of starlight. Her power felt different now. Not the gentle earth magic she'd always known, but something vast and cold that responded to her will with frightening eagerness. As she emerged from behind the cascade, water streaming from her hair like liquid diamonds, Luna felt the pack's collective gasp at her transformation. Her skin held a luminous quality that hadn't been there before, and her eyes reflected Dimitri's silver fire. She looked like herself, but changed, evolved into something that existed between worlds. "Luna." Elder Thorn's voice carried genuine concern alongside his authority. "Child, what have you done?" "What I should have done years ago," Luna replied, her voice carrying new harmonics that made several wolves step back instinctively. "I stopped accepting scraps and claimed what was mine." Behind her, though the pack couldn't see him, Dimitri watched with ancient eyes that gleamed with satisfaction. The first lesson had begun, and his student was already proving herself worthy of the darkness they would share. The pack's formation shifted as Luna's transformed presence registered fully. Elder Thorn stepped forward, his weathered face etched with concern that warred visibly with his duty to protect the pack from supernatural threats. Behind him, Beta Marcus struggled with conflicting emotions, his magically induced devotion to Celeste battling against years of genuine friendship with Luna. "You're not yourself," Elder Thorn said carefully, his voice taking on the tone he'd used when Luna was small and had wandered too close to dangerous territory. "Something has poisoned your mind, child. We're here to help." Luna felt Dimitri's amusement ripple through their newly forged connection, his ancient wisdom whispering strategies for managing the delicate situation. "Show them strength," his mental voice counseled, but not enough to force their hand. They must choose to retreat. "I've never been more myself," Luna replied, allowing just enough power to leak into her words that the air around her shimmered with otherworldly energy. "For the first time in my life, I'm not hiding in someone else's shadow." Celeste emerged from behind the circle of wolves, her perfect features arranged in an expression of sisterly anguish that would have fooled anyone who didn't know her as intimately as Luna did. The blood magic radiating from her skin had grown stronger since the festival, fed by whatever ritual she'd performed to bind Marcus and the others. "Luna, please," Celeste breathed, her voice breaking with manufactured emotion. "I know you're angry about Marcus, but this isn't the way. Whatever you found in those caves, it's using your pain against you." The manipulation was masterful, acknowledging Luna's hurt while simultaneously dismissing her agency, painting her as a victim of dark forces rather than someone who'd chosen to claim power. It was exactly the kind of psychological warfare Celeste had perfected over the years. Luna's newly awakened magic responded to her surge of anger, causing frost to spread across the stone beneath her feet despite the mild autumn night. Several pack members stepped back nervously, their wolves recognizing a predator that operated by different rules than anything they'd encountered. "You're right about one thing," Luna said, her silver-touched eyes fixed on her sister's face. "Something is using pain as a weapon. But it isn't what's behind me, it's what's standing in front of me, wearing my sister's face while corrupting everything it touches." Celeste's mask slipped for just an instant, revealing the cold calculation beneath her performance. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're confused, tainted by whatever ancient evil." "Ancient evil." Luna's laugh carried harmonics that made the waterfall's roar seem quiet by comparison. "Tell me, sister, when did you first taste blood magic? How long have you been stealing from our pack members to feed your own ambitions?" The accusation landed like a physical blow. Several wolves turned towards Celeste with new suspicion, their enhanced senses finally picking up the wrongness that Luna's transformation had made impossible to ignore. The borrowed power radiating from Celeste's skin, the sickly sweet scent of corruption that clung to her like expensive perfume. Beta Marcus took a confused step backward, his hand rising to his throat, as if suddenly aware of the invisible chains around his neck. "Celeste, what is she? What are you—" "Don't listen to her," Celeste snapped, dropping her concerned sister act as she realized Luna's accusations were finding fertile ground. "She's been corrupted. Can't you feel the wrongness coming from those caves? The darkness." Elder Thorn's expression had grown thoughtful, his ancient eyes moving between the sisters as pieces of a puzzle he'd been missing for years finally began clicking into place. "Luna," he said carefully, "step away from whatever lies behind you, and we'll discuss your sister's activities properly, with the full council." It was an olive branch, an acknowledgement that Celeste's behavior warranted investigation, but Luna could sense the trap beneath the offer. The moment she moved away from Dimitri's protection, they would bind her with suppression spells and drag her back to face judgment for consorting with their ancestral enemy. "They're afraid," Dimitri's voice whispered through her consciousness. "Your pack knows they cannot control what you've become, so they offer false compromises while preparing to strike. Show them the cost of deception." Luna felt the vast well of power Dimitri had awakened in her, cold and inexorable as winter moonlight. She could scatter them with a thought, could demonstrate exactly how far she'd grown beyond their ability to command. But she also sensed Dimitri's deeper strategy, the need to plant seeds of doubt that would grow in the dark times ahead. "I appreciate the offer, Elder Thorn," Luna said, her voice carrying new authority that made even the ancient pack leader straighten unconsciously. "But I'm no longer a wolf who begs for scraps from the pack table. When I return to Thornwood Falls, and I will return, it will be as an equal, not as a supplicant seeking permission to exist." The promise hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that would keep the pack elders awake for weeks to come. The silence stretched taut as a bowstring, every wolf frozen in the space between Luna's declaration and whatever would come next. Then Celeste's carefully constructed mask shattered completely, her beautiful features twisting with rage and something far more dangerous, desperation. "You pathetic, delusional little mouse," Celeste snarled, her voice dropping its honeyed sweetness for pure venom. "Do you think a few parlor tricks make you my equal? I am what I am through strength, through taking what I deserve. You're what you've always been, a shadow pretending to have substance." The blood magic around Celeste flared to life, crimson tendrils rising from her skin like living smoke. Luna felt the stolen essence of at least a dozen pack members woven into that power, including fresh threads that could only belong to Marcus and the other wolves who'd fallen under her sister's influence in recent days. "Now you see the true scope of her corruption," Dimitri's voice whispered through their bond. "She has been feeding for longer than anyone suspected. This confrontation was inevitable. She cannot allow you to exist as a threat to her carefully constructed web." "Celeste, stand down," Elder Thorn commanded, his own power rising to meet the blood magic threatening to spiral out of control. But Luna could sense his shock, the horrified realization that the corruption in his pack ran far deeper than he'd imagined. "Stand down?" Celeste laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "So Luna can return to poison everyone against me with her lies. So she can steal what's mine the way she's always tried to steal everything." Her crimson magic lashed out, not at the pack wolves who might defend her, but directly at Luna. "I should have dealt with you years ago." The attack hit Luna like a physical blow, blood magic designed to tear apart her essential self and leave her a hollow shell. It was the kind of working that should have destroyed any normal wolf instantly, unraveling their very existence from the inside out. Instead, Luna felt Dimitri's training surge through her consciousness, ancient knowledge flowing like ice water through her veins. The vampire's power rose to meet Celeste's stolen magic, and for the first time in her life, Luna stood as an equal force against her sister's overwhelming strength. Silver fire erupted around Luna's form, meeting the crimson assault head-on. Where the two magics collided, reality itself seemed to bend and fracture. The pack wolves scattered as raw power carved gouges in the stone around the waterfall, their terrified howls echoing off the canyon walls. "Impossible!" Celeste gasped, staggering back as her blood magic failed to overwhelm Luna's defenses. "What are you?" "Show her," Dimitri urged. "Let her see the choice she has made in forcing this confrontation." Luna stepped forward, Dimitri's silver fire flowing around her like a living cloak. With each step, frost spread beneath her feet, and the very air grew heavy with otherworldly presence. She could feel the Vampire King's essence intertwining with her own, lending her not just power, but centuries of accumulated will and determination. "I'm what you created," Luna said, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to come from the depths of the earth itself. "Every humiliation, every theft, every time you reduced me to nothing, it all led to this moment. You taught me that power is the only currency that matters, so I found a teacher who could show me what real power looks like." Celeste's eyes widened as the implications hit her. "You made a pact with the thing in the caves. You've damned yourself, you stupid girl." "I've freed myself," Luna corrected, and for the first time in her life, she truly meant it. The old Luna, the one who'd begged for scraps and accepted whatever treatment her sister chose to dish out, was gone, replaced by something that wouldn't bow to anyone's will but her own. The pack wolves had retreated to a safe distance, torn between their loyalty to Elder Thorn and their terror of the supernatural forces clashing before them. Luna could sense their confusion, their desperate need for someone to tell them which sister represented the greater threat to their world. "Now comes the true test," Dimitri's voice whispered. Your sister will not accept defeat gracefully. She will escalate, regardless of who might be harmed in the process. You must be prepared to match her escalation, or everything you've gained here will be lost." As if summoned by his warning, Celeste's expression shifted to something Luna had never seen before: pure, murderous calculation. Her sister's hands began to weave patterns in the air, blood magic flowing not from her own power reserves, but directly from the pack bonds she'd corrupted. Every wolf she'd touched, every essence she'd stolen, became fuel for what Luna realized with growing horror was a killing working of enormous scope. "If I can't have everything," Celeste whispered, her voice carrying across the sudden stillness like a death sentence, "then you'll have nothing at all." The blood magic erupted skyward, a crimson pillar that seemed to tear a hole in the night itself. Luna felt the working's true target and nearly staggered with the implications. Celeste wasn't just trying to destroy her rival anymore. She was trying to bring down the entire mountainside. The mountains screamed. Luna felt it through every nerve, the ancient stone crying out as Celeste's blood magic tore into the bedrock beneath them. Cracks spider-webbed across the canyon walls, and the waterfall itself began to falter as the underground springs that fed it shifted under the magical assault. "Stop!" Elder Thorn roared, his own power rising desperately to counter the working, but Luna could sense his horror as he realized the scope of what Celeste had unleashed. This wasn't just an attack. It was geological murder on a scale that would bury Thornwood Falls under 10,000 tons of stone and earth. "She's lost all reason." Dimitri's voice carried urgent alarm through their bond. "Stop her, Luna, whatever the cost." Luna threw herself into the magical maelstrom, silver fire meeting the crimson torrent that was slowly peeling the mountain apart layer by layer. But Celeste's working drew power from every corrupted pack bond she'd forged over the years, and Luna realized with growing despair that even with Dimitri's strength backing her, she couldn't match the sheer scope of stolen essence her sister commanded. "You can't stop me," Celeste shrieked over the sound of fracturing stone. "I've been planning this for months. Every touch, every stolen moment of intimacy, every wolf who thought they could resist me. They're all mine now, and their power is mine to spend." The pack wolves scattered as boulders began raining down from the canyon rim. Luna heard Beta Marcus cry out as a chunk of granite caught him across the shoulder, spinning him into the churning water below. Others were fleeing toward the forest, their terrified howls echoing off the unstable walls. "The binding," Dimitri said urgently. "If we don't act now, the magical feedback will shatter my prison completely. I'll be free, but the mountain will collapse and everyone here will die." Luna's heart seized as she understood the impossible choice before her. She could let Dimitri break free and save them all with his ancient power, but a vampire king unleashed upon the world would mean death and darkness beyond imagining. Or she could maintain his bonds and watch her pack, corrupt and manipulative though they were, be buried alive. "Choose quickly," Celeste laughed, blood streaming from her eyes and nose as the massive working consumed her stolen reserves. "Your precious pack, or your monster lover. You can't save both." Luna reached deeper into the well of power Dimitri had opened within her, drawing on reserves she hadn't known existed. Silver fire erupted around her in a nova of desperate strength, pushing back against the crimson torrent. For a moment, she thought she might actually stop it. Then Celeste played her final card. "Marcus," she whispered, and the blood magic suddenly spiked as she began draining the life force from every wolf she'd touched directly from their bodies. Luna watched in horror as Marcus, still struggling in the churning water below, went rigid as his essence was ripped away. Elder Thorn collapsed to his knees as decades of stolen moments, brief touches during pack ceremonies, formal greetings, became conduits for Celeste's killing magic. "Stop. You're murdering them." "They're already mine," Celeste replied, her beautiful face now gaunt and terrible as she consumed everything she'd claimed over the years. "Just like you were always meant to be." Luna felt the exact moment when her power failed. The silver fire guttered and died as Celeste's assault overwhelmed every defense Dimitri had taught her. The crimson pillar of destruction roared higher, and the mountain's death scream reached a pitch that shattered stone and sanity alike. "I'm sorry," Luna whispered to Dmitri through their bond, as she felt his prison beginning to crack under the magical pressure. "I wasn't strong enough." "You were stronger than anyone had a right to expect," he replied, and she could feel his ancient sadness through their connection. "But some battles cannot be won with strength alone. Remember what I taught you about sacrifice, Luna. Sometimes we must lose everything to save what matters most." The meaning hit her like a physical blow. To stop Celeste's working, to save the pack and keep Dmitri contained, Luna would have to sever their bond entirely. She would lose the power that had finally made her equal to her sister's malice, lose the connection to the one being who had ever seen her as worthy of love and respect. She would go back to being nothing. "No," she whispered, but even as she spoke, Luna knew it was the only way. Celeste's stolen power was too vast, her willingness to kill too absolute. Without Dimitri's strength, Luna couldn't win, but she could choose how she lost. The silver fire around her began to dim as she slowly, deliberately, began cutting the threads that bound her to the Vampire King. Each severed connection felt like losing a piece of her soul, but the feedback was disrupting Celeste's working, forcing her to choose between maintaining her destruction and keeping her magical reserves intact. "What are you doing?" Celeste snarled. "You can't—" But Luna was already fading, the power draining out of her like water through broken glass. She was becoming ordinary again, becoming nothing again, just as Dimitri's voice whispered one final message through their dissolving bond. "This is not the end, my dark star. It is only the beginning." Then the connection snapped, and Luna Blackthorn fell into darkness as the mountain's screaming finally stopped.